This is an I Am Listening original podcast.
We received so much. We were so lucky and so fortunate in many ways in a situation that was so unfortunate. And, it's little things like that just, they create these spaces, those cold cots create these opportunities. And it seems so silly on the face of it. It's just a piece of technology, it's just a product. At the end of the day, they, order one and put it together, but it makes such a world-changing difference,
Welcome to A Journey with Abigail's Footsteps, a podcast about the difference this baby loss charity is making to lives across the country. I'm Nicola Everett, a very proud ambassador of Abigail's Footsteps, a charity that supports families at the most difficult time and provides training to healthcare professionals. Sadly, in the UK, it's estimated that 1 in 4 pregnancies ends in the loss of a baby. Despite that figure, it's still something that many find difficult to talk about, and families can face a wall of silence. We're hoping this series of podcasts will break down that wall. Parents will be sharing their own experiences, which at times may be difficult to listen to, but we will also hear their inspirational stories of resilience and hope, and how you can get involved in making a difference to so many amazing families. Thank you for listening to episode 4, where I'm joined by 3 dads who very kindly agreed to speak about their experience with baby loss. First, you're going to hear from Jack Jeffrey and Tom Gower. Jack and Tom, thank you ever so much for being on the podcast and talking about your experiences and also how Abigail's Footsteps has helped you. Jack, if I can come to you first, would you mind telling me about Olivia, your daughter?
It was just over 2 years ago now. We lost Olivia. My wife was just coming up to 20 weeks, and it just came out of nowhere, to be honest. We was one night at home, wife was just getting some pains. Didn't think anything of it, got progressively worse. And then, so we went up to the hospital, and within half hour, it was all over. It was an absolute whirlwind of a night, to be honest. It was, she gave birth to Olivia, and it was only at that point that we kind of knew what had happened. Even arriving at the hospital, we just thought she was having some pains, literally, our minds was all over the place. And it wasn't until, like I say, we kind of went upstairs into the room, and it was quite a bit of an emergency. And then, before we knew it, the kind of midwives were just apologising, and then it hit home. So, that was just over 2 years ago. It was just extremely traumatic. The way, I don't think there's obviously there's not a nice way for it to happen, but I think the way it happened to us as well didn't help, and it made the grief process a bit more traumatic because of how traumatic it was and how it happened, in terms of when we got to the hospital and my wife was kind of in the reception, and it was just all very traumatic, to be honest. But 2 years ago now. As you say, they're a very traumatic experience. Yeah. As a partner, seeing your other half go through something like that, how did it make you feel? A bit helpless, to be honest. It's you can't really. you just feel like you've got to be kind of strong for them, obviously a bit like I say after it happened, but while it was happening, you're kind of putting on a brave face, if I'm honest. At the time, as soon as we went upstairs into the room and then realised what had happened, I'm obviously just consoling my wife, and I'm kind of like, it's going to be fine, and not even thinking about myself, not even thinking about my feelings, because at the time I'm just trying to be there for her, and I knew that there was nothing I could say that would take it away or make it any better, but all I've got to do is just be there for her, cuddle her, let her cry on my shoulder. But it wasn't nice to see her go through the pain initially of being at home and being in pain, not being able to stand up and stuff. It's like any pregnancy, I think, kind of in that moment, I feel like the bloke kind of probably does just feel helpless throughout, when a woman's having sickness and stuff, and it's kind of there's nothing you can do as a man. You can't take away anything. You've just got to kind of be there, and that was what I just tried to do my best, to be honest. And because there was not really much else I could do. Tom, your son Oliver was born sleeping at Darren Valley Hospital. Would you mind telling us about your experience and what happened?
So Oliver was born in January 2018. Jane got to, I think it was 40 plus 4, so we full term and a bit more. With us, we'd been trying for a child for around 7 years, so we were kind of at the last sort of stages of trying, going to go through IVF, but we managed to fall naturally, which was brilliant. And then, yeah, obviously on that day, similar story to Jack really, wake up not feeling right, go to the hospital, find the most horrible news you'd ever want to hear, and then pretty much straight away Jane went into labour. I think she was given a tablet, but I think she went naturally, and after 16 hour, I think it was labour, Oliver was born. It was, as Jack said, it's one of the worst things. It will be the worst thing I'll think I'll ever go through, and the same as Jane. And for us personally, and what I've always said to Jane is, it was two things that we were grieving. It was Oliver and the fact that we haven't got our family that we've been wanting and didn't get.
How were you able to support your partner at that time? Jack was saying earlier how helpless you felt. How did you feel when seeing your wife go through that?
Pretty much the same. There's nothing you can do really as a man or as anybody. It is both of us. We both have lost a child, but it's Jane who's gone through the pregnancy, had to give birth, and you just got to be as strong as you can for Jane and your wife. And I think it became my focus really. You just want to. What there isn't much you can. You just got to support them. You got to be there to listen to them, a shoulder to cry on. And we were lucky. We got really good friends and family around us that helped us and supported us all the way through the journey, really. And still to this day, it's 5 years ago, but with all the events that we do, still really, really well supported with all of our friends and family. And it was massive for us that Oliver's name is known. He was part of our family. He was our firstborn son. It is. Everybody knows his name. All the events, people love the events. Raising lots of money. It's all we can do in this scenario.
And what support did you both receive from Abigail's? Had either of you heard of the charity and the work they do before your experiences with baby loss, Jack?
No, if I'm being totally honest, I hadn't. And to this day, I always say to Becky and Faye, the girls at Abigail, I always kind of say to them in the nicest possible way, I wish I'd never met them. And then they laugh, but it's true, because obviously if I hadn't gone through what we had gone through, then I wouldn't have met them. But it's, as Tom said, it's kind of like the only thing that we feel like we can do now is give back, because we obviously got offered the support straight away from the counselling sessions that they offer, and then we continued them in terms of like paying for them ourselves because we felt like we needed some more. But it was amazing. I think at the time when we got offered them, I said to my wife, we was both a bit unsure about whether we wanted to do it, not necessarily whether we needed it, and we went to a couple of sessions, and I said to my wife, I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I said, I'm coming away from these feeling worse. And then something just changed, and we started to kind of get to know it a bit better. And it was just, it was actually really, really beneficial, because you're opening up to someone that you've never spoke to before. But it wasn't necessarily making anything go away, because it never will go away. But it was just kind of learning how to deal with it. It was, the support was there straight away from Abigail's, and it's something that, me and my wife will never forget, because there was nothing that could at the time that could kind of make us feel better, but it certainly helped the process of kind of moving on and getting used to the fact that, look, it's happened, it's awful, but the brutal side of it is like life will go on. And so that's what kind of, and it was that we had to kind of get our heads around. And if it wasn't for Abigail's offering counselling sessions, then who knows kind of where our headspace would have been. So it was, like I say, being honest, prior to losing Olivia, I hadn't heard too much about Abigail's.
Tom, what support did you receive?
When Oliver passed away, we actually didn't get to know Faye and Abigail's, basically, till George, my second son, was born. So we went to some early scans because obviously we were a bit nervous. And we were then actually told or advised about the charity and the counselling sessions that they offer, which Jane took up. And it really helped us through the pregnancy with George, our second. I think the midwife who actually gave birth to Abigail was part of the midwife team that gave birth to George, so it was quite nice in that aspect. But yeah, after that we got to know more about Abigail's. We had done some fundraising for another baby charity beforehand, and to be fair to them, they'd helped us out and provided us a lot before. But with Abigail's, we just find it's a bit more personal. It's you know what you're raising your money for. You can really feel like you're involved, part of the team. And yeah, so since then we've been raising for Abigail's, and it's been great.
You mentioned there your second son. How difficult was it initially to have that conversation of, do we try for another baby?
I think for us, because we've always wanted a family, and we've been trying for so long, it was a given. We were going to be trying. It was more trying to stop us, really. Don't do it too quickly. So yeah, and even then it took a bit longer than we hoped. And as I say, we had difficulties actually falling. So yeah, to get George was another blessing for us, really. But obviously, with what happened, it was a very, very scary time. We were regularly up the hospital and having checks, and they were great as well, to be fair to them. So, and then COVID, George being born at the height of COVID was not great. But we've got George now, and as I said to Jane, that part of the grieving process kind of can stop now. We've got our family. It's not as big as we want it to be, but we've got our family.
You mentioned that your wife received counselling. Did you receive any counselling, or did you feel that wasn't something that you needed at the time?
At that time, no, if I'm honest. And it's one of the things that we spoke about. Jane had the counselling, and there'll be times where she felt okay, and then she'd start feeling guilty for feeling okay, or having a good day. And I try to say there's nothing wrong with having a good day or feeling okay for a certain amount of time. And likewise, obviously it's really tough, but I felt as though I didn't need the counselling. And again, I said, that's okay. I'm not going to feel as though I should be having counselling. If I know I'm feeling okay, then that's okay. But to know that it's there and it's available to you, that may be why I felt so comfortable in saying no. If I didn't have that option, maybe that wouldn't be the case.
Jack, you've mentioned already that you benefited from the counselling. How was it immediately after what happened with Olivia that you were able to talk openly to perhaps friends or family? Because it's not easy, particularly for other people, is it, to talk about? They don't know what to say. It's very much a taboo subject. Is that what you found when this happened to you?
Absolutely. I mean, me and my wife would be the first to admit this as well. We have dealt with this and will continue to in different ways, but I think we both respect each other's ways of dealing with it. So I'm kind of more very open to speaking about it. That's not me saying that I like speaking about it, but I feel like, when it happened, I was kind of like, I have very close friends and family were coming around to see us, and I was the one telling the story. We'd both get upset, but she just couldn't bring herself to speak about it, whereas I was the one that was doing it. And again, it maybe at the time I felt like I was the man and I felt like I had to do that. But knowing my wife, and that's just not in her character and personality. And it's the same with like Abigail's and stuff. I'm kind of the one that will openly speak about things. And I feel like, since going through what we've gone through, knowing that it is still a bit of a taboo subject, it's now just important for me to kind of, because it's crazy when something happens to you like this. It's crazy then how many people have kind of come out and then said, oh, we lost a baby at this stage, and I didn't know about it. And there's 2 or 3 people that we know and that I would class as friends that have kind of then spoken about it and said, oh, we had a miscarriage at this time, etc. And it's frightening and scary how many people it happens to. But I feel like people, some people are just kind of not ready or not feel like they don't need to speak about it. But for me, it was kind of like, look, we've gone through this and it's absolutely terrible. Like, it will be the worst thing that happens to us. But at the same time, I want to kind of give back and like kind of make people aware that it happens and that there are ways of dealing with it. There's like, things will be okay. It's never going to go away. But it's just kind of learning how to deal with it. Kind of life will go on. I found it okay kind of talking about it as such. Like I say, I would get upset, and I don't get as upset now, but I think I don't know why. I couldn't tell you why, because it still hurts just as much. But in terms of talking about it, kind of, I felt like, and maybe that helped with the counselling. I don't know, because at the time, like I say, when we started the counselling, we had 2 sessions. I came away feeling worse than I went in, and I was kind of like, I feel like these are meant to help. But I was actually coming away feeling worse, and it was because I was opening up. But then something changed, so I don't know, maybe the counselling helped with the way that I've kind of dealt with it and been able to speak out about it a bit more. With me spreading the word in terms of Abigail's and kind of giving back for what they've helped us with, it's actually, like I say, opened up. There's been 2 or 3 people that have come to me and told me their stories, and it's even like a couple of people within the industry that I work in that I wouldn't say they're friends, but they've come to me because I share stuff on LinkedIn and stuff, and they've been like, look, it's amazing what you're doing, and then can we meet up? And I've met up with them, and then they've told me a story that happened to them, and so I feel like that's weirdly a positive, to be like, look, it's actually helping other people speak. So for me, it's kind of that's I'll never stop the way that I deal with it. My wife's very different, but I respect that. That's the way that she wants to be. So it doesn't mean she doesn't care or doesn't have the same feelings. It's just everyone deals with it differently, because there's no right or wrong way of dealing with it. And that's, I think, what's really important as well. It's everyone deals with it differently, and just because you're not shouting about things on social media and stuff, it doesn't mean you don't feel the same as the people that are. It's just it's not as easy for some people to deal with it than others, really.
Tom, you were nodding your head in agreement there that you suddenly heard of other people and you had no idea that they had been through a similar loss to yourself. Do you think it is that perhaps it hasn't been a subject that's spoken about very much, or, as you mentioned earlier, men have to put on that brave face and perhaps they just haven't opened up in the past?
100%. It's it's that taboo word, isn't it? It's nobody likes to talk about it, and especially, I've heard from friends and family and that they've had similar instances, and way back in the past. And I think in this time, it is a time that people do talk more, which is good. But as Jack says, just to reiterate, there is no rule book. There is dealing with grief. People deal with it differently. Myself and Jack, we like to shout about it a bit and do the fundraising that we do, and active on charity work and on social media, etc. But I think a lot of people, they don't want to talk about it as much, which again I completely understand.
And did you find throughout the whole pregnancy process initially there was enough support for dads generally, or did you find at the time that there was an awful lot of focus on mum, and maybe you were supporting mum as best you could, but was there enough support for you, and was there enough support for you immediately after what happened, do you think?
I think with us, with Oliver, we did have some joint sessions in a group with one of the other charities. And I think for Jane, especially, knowing she's not alone, that kind of helped her, that, she's not the only person in the world that this is happening to. And talking to other families and supporting each other, that was really, really good. For me in particular, no, I don't think there was much really out there at that time. I didn't know about Abigail's at that point. But I think that with the group sessions that we had, that really helped us.
Do you think there's enough support out there generally, Jack? What would you say?
Probably not, I'd say. I think going through what we've been through, it's naturally, like I said earlier, you're the man. You need to put on a brave face, but you're going through this as well. And I think even just throughout pregnancy itself, obviously when you're doing some of the classes and stuff like that, a lot of it is, I would say it should be, in terms of it's all about the mum and kind of how but I do feel like there can be more help and support for dads. I don't know off the top of my head kind of what that would look like, but I do feel like it's very much kind of all focused on the mum. And like I say, that's not taking away anything that what they do, because what women have to do to eventually have a baby, what they have to go through is incredible. Like I say, we're fortunate enough that we have now had a baby. We've got a 7-month-old daughter, and what my wife went through to get us to that point is incredible, because she was classed as high risk. So she had to take injections daily for the whole pregnancy, take tablets, etc. Because of what we found out happened previously. We wanted to try and prevent it. So everything was what she went through is amazing. So that it should be focused on them like 100%. But I do still think that there should, like, the dads can't be forgotten about. And then obviously after as well, like when something like this tragically happens, it's naturally everyone's first instinct is, oh, has your wife, has the mum, which it's going to be, but not often enough it was, how are you, or how's your partner getting on. I don't want to for one second say that it's not all about the men at all, but there is an element that you have to, you're both in it, and you're both part of it, and the men's kind of mental health side of it can't be ignored. There was some people that would say certain things and you'd kind of come away thinking, I can't believe you've just said that, but I know it wasn't meant out of spite. It would just be like, even just a comment of, oh, it'll be okay. It's like, that's. I now know that going through this, there's certain things that you kind of shouldn't really say, because you can't really say that to someone that's just lost their child, like, it's going to be okay, because it's never going to be okay. But for me, it's just, if someone was to, unfortunately, like, pray to God, not go through something similar that we was close to, I feel like we'd be in a slightly better place to kind of help them and how to say things to them, because there's just certain things. And the main thing is just people to just say, look, I'm here. If you need me, you know where I am. Like, we're thinking of you. Because I think if you try too hard to try and make people feel better, it can come across the wrong way. In general, I do think that there should be and could be more support for men throughout the pregnancy and after, in cases like this.
Thank you both so much for coming in to talk about Olivia and Oliver. I really appreciate it. And as I said before, I know it's not easy, but what you've been able to do for the charity will help so many other families going forward. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Baby loss charity Abigail's Footsteps offers counselling for grieving parents and specialist bereavement training for midwives and healthcare professionals. With compassion and care, Abigail's Footsteps has provided solace to countless bereaved families across Kent and the UK. Their Abbey cooling cots have allowed hundreds of parents to cherish precious moments and make memories with their baby, additional time they thought they might never have. Your generous support, help and donations will make all the difference in enabling this incredible Kent charity to continue their invaluable services. To learn how you can make a meaningful difference and support Abigail's Footsteps, visit their website at abigailsfootsteps.co.uk.
Joining me next on this episode is Ryan Godolphin, whose baby son died and complications led to his partner also fighting for her life. Ryan, would you mind telling me a bit about your story and what happened to you and your partner?
Yeah, so about 3 months ago, we went into labour. So we had a very normal pregnancy, very, very, as one of our midwives described it, a very boring pregnancy. And then when we went into labour, a complication developed with my partner where she had these unknown at the time aneurysms that had developed that ruptured during labour. And unfortunately, due to the bleeding internally and complications through the treatment we received, our son, Max, passed away. And then we went through quite a long process of saving the life of my partner, which she was put in a coma for about 2 weeks. And after a series of surgeries, we were able to save my fiancée. But unfortunately, our son, Max, passed away.
Ryan, I don't think anyone can imagine what you were going through at that time. It must be difficult, but can you try and put into words what that was like for you, seeing both your partner going through that, but also then experiencing the loss of your son?
Do you know what? That's a funny one, because I sort of rack my brain, really. It's one of those things where whenever people ask me, they'd always say, like, I couldn't imagine how it feels. And I kept saying to them, like, oh, it's exactly how you'd imagine it feels. But actually, I appreciate that's not necessarily how how everyone would come into it. It's one of those things where I kind of see it in chapters because we did go through so much. Like I said, my partner was in a coma for 2 weeks. So that was sort of me just sort of staring at her in a bed, hoping that she'd get better. So, at each point, when it happened, we were very close to the point where we'd go, when you're going through labour, our water's broke in the morning and they send you away and they say, when it gets to this certain point, a number of contractions in so many minutes, come back in, and we were really close. And she said to me, I think we're really close. I think we're going to hit it, but we haven't had any dinner. So I went off and made her some dinner. And then when it happened, when the actual aneurysm ruptured, she called out to me and said, Ryan, I'm gonna collapse. And that's when I came rushing in and she started to seize. And that was when sort of it all kicked off. So in the moment there, just sort of, you kind of go into automatic, you just try and do what you can and call the ambulance and stuff. And then as time goes on, you just kind of start to, I don't know, your responsibility and your role changes as a dad. You're kind of supplement to the requirements through a lot of it. You're just kind of there. But once your partner goes into, a really critical condition, suddenly your role becomes very important, and all the conversations you've had leading up to that about what would we do if this happened, or, how would we deal with that suddenly starts to really become very relevant. And then you become the person who is responsible, and that was a big thing I felt through this, was this burden and responsibility of like, well, look, it's my job to advocate for my partner. She can't talk, she's in a coma for most of this, and you sort of dig deep. And luckily we have an incredibly open relationship. We have great communication. We were able to, weirdly, before it all happened, have conversations about, well, what would we do if I had a medical emergency and I had to do this, or what would you do? And it was very lucky because I was able to then sort of step in and advocate. So yeah, while it's happening, I think it's very easy because it's very clear what you need to do and what your responsibility is. It is those times where, my partner wasn't there. She was in a coma, and, and as much as your family is all around you and you've got this amazing, group of people you never expected would be tested in this way, but they all come through so incredibly. But there are times where you are just on your own, and that was when it was the hardest, when you're just, all I wanted to do was talk to her, just say, what do we do here? What do you want to do? And when you have a very clear role and you're working hard for that, it's very easy. But it's those times where you're just there in it, and they're the very tough times, and that's where it really feels quite crushing. I think the best way I could describe it was that when I gave the sort of eulogy to my son at his funeral, sort of the best way I could describe it is I feel completely broken, but there's like a piece of me missing. But it's not strange because I know exactly what that piece is. That's my son.
And Ryan, you were in such an awful situation in that you were trying to process the grief of losing your son when your partner was critically ill. How did Abigail's help you, and when did you hear about them and start to get some support from them?
I mean, to add some nuance to it as well, what was particularly complicated with our case was that after we'd lost our son, my partner's health needs were such that the hospital we were in, where we had our cesarean in the end was how he was born, couldn't care for her. Her needs were beyond that. So we had to transfer to St Thomas's in central London. And we had the very difficult decision, I had the very difficult decision there to leave my son behind. So I had to leave my son behind at Tunbridge Wells, in Tunbridge Wells Hospital. So he was cared for there and, was looked after by their incredible midwifery team. And where it started to really engage with all the sort of charities was that there are these amazing human beings I didn't even know existed, and they're called bereavement midwives. And their whole role and responsibility is to really just be there for you. And they are just, I've met quite a few now because I've dealt with the Tunbridge Wells bereavement midwifery team, and I've also dealt with the St Thomas's bereavement midwifery team. And just out of everyone, these just amazing people just work so hard for you, right? And it was the bereavement midwife at Tunbridge Wells, who right from the get-go, once I'd found out the cesarean had occurred, that my son was in the world, but that they'd then found these complications for my partner, and she was then taken down to the ICU, and that's when she wasn't woken up from that surgery. That's when the bereavement midwife sort of just came into my world, really, and just were just so amazing. And it was from there, really, that our bereavement midwife got us in touch with Abigail. And also there's, this is the other side of the world that you just don't know exists until you've sort of lost a child in this way, is that there's just this whole network of just absolutely incredible people. So there's all these amazing charities, and Abigail's Footsteps was one that we were told about right away, that they're kind of here for you, right? That they're here when you need them, and that there's lots of things that they can offer you. And for us, what was such an amazing lifeline was that they offered counselling, so they can provide counselling for bereaved parents, and that's what we took them up on. But there's so many other things. There's this thing called cold cots, which are, you know, when you lose a child, you have the option of meeting them, you know, when they're newly born. And what's so very complicated is that, you know, they really do just look like they're asleep. You know, it's this perfectly human. Our son he was born on his due date. You know, he was just absolutely smashed. There was nothing wrong with him. He didn't have any, you know, sort of gestational issues that would have caused it. It was simply that his mum was dying. And there's this opportunity to go see them, but I declined that opportunity because me and my partner, before she'd gone in for the cesarean, we'd agreed that we were going to meet him together. We met my son. We managed to get him transferred from Tunbridge Wells to St Thomas's, so that when my partner came out of her coma, we were able to both meet him together for the first time. And the cold cot's a thing that they can put him in. It gives you kind of an unlimited amount of time with them. You know, if you didn't have that, then you know, there might be issues keeping him safe and you know keeping him well. But one of the things I know that Abigail's Footsteps provides is these cold cots. They provide them to the hospitals, and again, it's just this whole, you know, world of things that you just, why would you know about it? You know, why would you know about it? But oh my God, am I glad it exists? You know, because it's made just a world of difference to us. Just in a situation that's been so incredibly tough. There's so many things that just are solved. You know, it's even little things like the funeral homes have an agreement between each other that they will cover any of the costs. So we were very worried. Like, I was out of work, you know, I'm self-employed, so I was out of work for 5-6 weeks really through this to care for my partner and bring her home. And as it was, I went back to work 4 days after her last surgery, you know. So we were very worried about things like, how do we give him the send-off that he deserves, or that is, you know, as tough it is to say goodbye, you know, how do we do that? But it's little things like the fact that all of the, you know, the funeral costs were completely covered. So, yeah, I think what's been very positive, because there are positives in these terrible situations, but what's been very positive about this is that the only things I really feel we've been left with is the feelings from it, you know, like the reality of what we went through, rather than, you know, in other situations, it could just be the bureaucracy, you know, just the logistics of dealing with the thing. We haven't had to worry about that. And there's so many amazing charities and people and just incredible world of things that just kind of rallies around you and supports you in that, and just allows you to kind of be in it, because it's hard enough. It really is hard enough just to be in it, you know. There's not been a day that goes by that I've not sobbed, you know, that I've not cried through this, that it's not been incredibly tough, you know. It is a physical pain.
The fact, Ryan, that you were able to spend time with your son despite what else was going on, and that your partner was also, once she came out of her coma, able to see your son because of the cold cot. I mean, how important going forward for you do you think it is that you've had that time, you will have those memories together?
Yeah, indescribable. You know, again, it was the bereavement midwives who, they really kind of coached you through it. We were really scared to meet him. You don't really know what to expect. We hadn't seen him at this point. And actually, believe it or not, we didn't know his gender up until this point. We tried to keep it a surprise. And, you know, he was in the world for 2 weeks, and bless him, all the staff also kept it secret. You know, we were just calling him Pickle. And to think about the way they described it. So we were saying to the bereavement midwives, we said to them, "Oh, what can we expect?" And they said, "Well, look, he looks asleep." They said, he was cared for incredibly well. And when you meet him, he'll just look like he's asleep. But, you know, but what they said is that everybody who they've spoken to who leaves has this sort of tremendous feeling of peace or being at ease. And I think for me, that is probably the best way I can describe it. It's a very hard feeling to describe, this feeling of turmoil before, you know, this unrest, that there's this person you feel like you know so well, but you've never met. You know, that I spoke every day he was in the womb, you know, I spoke to him, and it was very strange that he was in the wild, wasn't named, didn't know his gender, and that he was there and we hadn't met him. And once we met him, we had this just this feeling of just kind of being settled. Like I know him a bit, and I know things about him, and it's very hard what you're left with now. Once he's gone, you're left with these feelings of loss, but you also have these things that I do know about him. He was in the 98th percentile for foot size. He had these massive feet. It was so funny. Like, and he had these big hands and like a little blockhead like me. He's got a little square head, and he had a full head of hair and all this kind of stuff. So I feel like I know him a little bit. So, and the nice thing about the Colcotts as well is that you can keep going back. So we met him, and we took some photos and stuff. One of the things the bereavement midwife say to us, try and think of the things you'd want in 6 months' time. Not necessarily today, but think what you might want in 6 months' time, or 5 years' time, or 10 years' time, because this is the only opportunity, and whilst you might feel uncomfortable now, try and think of your future self. It's fine to do too much and not need it, but to not do enough would be much harder. So, we met him for the first time together, and we spent hours with him. We got him dressed, we got him, we had this outfit picked out for him to take him home, and that's what we'd put him in. And my mum had knitted this blanket, like dinosaurs kind of wound up being his thing. We just wound up getting him a load of dinosaurs. So my mum had knitted this big orange blanket with dinosaurs on it, and we got him all wrapped up in that. And then the day after we met him was my family got to meet him. So, my brother and my sister-in-law and all the siblings of my partner, and my mum and dad and her dad and his partner, they all got to meet my son as well, which was amazing. But the Colcotts give you that opportunity, like had my partner not been in a coma, the reality is we'd have gone back to see him maybe even every day. That was a possibility, but we would have gone back and seen him as much as we could, as it was. We did lose a bit of time because of the coma, but we had that space that was kind of protected, that what we wanted was to meet him together, and for all the luck in the world, we managed to make that happen, and for all the will of all the people involved, they were able to create that space. We were very fortunate for things like the Colcotts. I think my biggest catalyst from this, my biggest takeaway is I have this need this want to kind of give back to it, because I just feel like we received so much. We were so lucky and so fortunate in many ways in a situation that was so unfortunate. And it's little things like that just, they create these spaces. Those Colcotts create these opportunities, and it seems so silly on the face of it. It's just a piece of technology. It's just a product. At the end of the day, they order one and put it together, but it makes such a world-changing difference.
And you've been able to benefit as well from counselling through Abigail's. I know that's something that you've been doing very, very recently. Do you think that has also helped? Obviously, the Colcott has helped immensely, and we've heard other stories about how that's helped other people. As far as the counselling is concerned, how important has that been for you?
There's definitely a dimension to add to this, that being a man, I do think there are challenges around this sort of thing. It's not going back a few generations. I simply don't think I would have been considered. There's this funny thing I have found now being in the space, is that I think there is a tremendous amount of support, as there should be, for mothers, and I do kind of have this feeling that as a dad, that whether it's a wider change or whether it's maybe a macro thing, or if it's that men struggle more with it, but it has been quite hard to find support groups or things that are other men struggling with it. So to be given kind of this lifeline for counselling has been fantastic. It's an opportunity for the two of us to be together and to just start unpicking it all, just start processing it, which is its own challenge, but it's one of those things going forward. It's the space that if there was some change I could make, it's maybe to offer a lifeline to other dads, that how could this affect you any less? We're both parents. How could it be any harder for one than the other? It is so much to go through, and that I keep using this term lifeline, but it helps. It really helps. It makes the difference, because it is hard. It is incredibly hard, and it is hard enough if you're on your own and feeling isolated.
My next guest is Naomi Marston, who is a counsellor and also an ambassador for Abigail's Footsteps. Naomi, thank you so much for being part of this podcast. I was just wondering if you could start by telling me how your association with Abigail's Footsteps first began.
Well, we're going back, I think, about 2017, 2018, when I met David Ward. We were just generally talking about how there are no services, counselling services for bereaved parents. And at the time, I was wearing another hat and I worked for another charity where I was unofficially supporting and counselling mothers who were having terminations for medical reasons mainly, or making the decision of not to terminate because of medical reasons, and supporting parents whose babies and children were either dying or living with life-limiting conditions. So although I was doing this very unofficially, if you want, in inverted commas, I really knew that this was a service that was needed. And yeah, just having coffee with David one day and saying, do you know what, there's this service that I really think that's needed. And he agreed and reflected upon how potentially his journey would have been different after losing Abigail's if that service was offered to him and Joe. So that was kind of when the seed was planted. And then it took a wee while to get funding. And then once we got funding, we started up a counselling service in 2019.
And since then, Naomi, you have spoken to so many families who've gone through a devastating loss. Are you able to, kind of from your point of view, describe how you think that has helped and supported them on their journey?
The counselling?
Yes.
Well, I hope that it's changed their lives for a significant improvement, because I think we also know, research has shown us that if we can support parents at the time after they've recently bereaved, that actually subsequent pregnancies, their mental health is better, their emotional health is better. And then when they're parenting either existing living children or their future children, they've got those tools, they've got those equipment that they've achieved through counselling that will support them parenting.
And how does counselling for parents who've lost a baby in this way differ from counselling people who may have lost a loved one at another stage of their life? So an older person, for example.
I think it's massively different because it's not what we're taught, is it? This is not the circle of life. You don't ever become a parent thinking that actually your baby's going to die before you or your child is going to die before you. It's also quite a taboo subject, so we don't talk about it. And it was certainly a taboo subject when you kind of go back generations. I've had the fortunate experience or unfortunate, but I was very fortunate that my mum spoke very honestly to me when she lost 2 babies. And so I'm the rainbow baby from my brother who died before me. And she was always very, very open and honest to me. But I think she was unique. And I don't think that her generation were encouraged to talk about that. In fact, we know that when those mothers gave birth to stillbirth babies, they were just taken away from them. They weren't allowed to hold them. They weren't allowed to see them. They weren't allowed to name them. And now we know that that is absolutely devastating and doesn't support emotional well-being or good emotional health. So it is very different. It's very different because you can't share your experience with everyone. You know, it's completely different if it's from your granny or your granddad or Auntie Mildred, etc., who's died. Your emotions are different. You go through different thoughts and feelings. You have no memories. You don't know your child's favourite song. You don't know your child's colour of their eyes. All of those kind of things that we create memories from a living person isn't there in baby loss. And I just think it's a completely different roller coaster of emotions. And what's really important, I think, about the service that we provide at Abigail's is that every one of us has had some kind of experience. We're not just a counsellor that's, qualified in generic counselling. We've all specialised in this area. We've all got some kind of unique experience in this area. And so therefore we can not only empathise with our parents, but we can actually sympathise as well. And I think that is what makes us unique.
So you mentioned there, Naomi, how the grief and dealing with that grief, because you don't have those memories, can be very, very different to parents, and everybody is different. I suppose there's no timescale, is it, as to say how many sessions people will need with you and when they would need their sessions. I know we've heard stories from parents who've actually left it quite a while before they've sought you out and they've asked for some support, because everybody in this situation is going to be very, very different, aren't they?
People have to kind of be their best own judge for this, and they have to recognise that when they do need help, and actually to reach out sooner rather than later. I think that would be my take-home message, is that people reach out sooner rather than later, rather than they just keep struggling and saying, oh, this will get better, because naturally some people will have better days than others. And on those better days, that kind of leads you into this false sense of, I don't need counselling. I still think that people think that counselling means that, somehow you're not coping, where actually for us as counsellors, we see that as a positive. We see that people are really in touch with their emotions and in touch with themselves. If they go, actually, do you know what, I'm having a really tough time and I need a wee bit of help here, that's music to our ears, because it's a lot easier to help somebody and to support them and to give them strategies than it is if people are in denial.
How much of a difference do you think it's made that midwives are also getting a lot more training and are passing on the message that Abigail's exists and there is an opportunity for some form of counselling as well?
I think it authenticates it, and I think it's almost because those midwives are often, they're their first point of contact. Often those midwives has delivered that baby. So if they're saying, look, this service is available to you, let me know if either you want us to contact Abigail's or you can contact Abigail's. It's almost saying to them, this is acceptable, this is the norm, this is what you need to do. So I think it's vitally important, because they're at the forefront and they see those parents in their most vulnerable moments.
And how important has the incredible amount of fundraising that goes on for Abigail's been as far as you're concerned? Because that's allowed an awful lot of parents to be able to get help and support from you, hasn't it?
Oh, it's been life-changing. Absolutely life-changing for so many parents, but not only for so many parents. It's been life-changing for us as a charity, because we've been able to expand our services, we've been able to take on more counsellors, we've been able to extend our services to support midwives and other healthcare professionals as well, that actually support our bereaved parents, because, they're really affected. If anyone thinks that a midwife is not affected, or a doctor's not affected, or a consultant's not affected who delivers a dead baby, they're wrong, because essentially we're all human, so how can it not affect us? So it's been life-changing. The funding has been, I'm not able to put it into words at what a difference it's made.
That's actually a really interesting part of it, because it is perhaps something we don't think about when we're talking about medical professionals. You kind of think they're slightly superhuman in a way, don't you? And that this is part of their job and they can deal with it. But obviously that's not going to be the case.
No. 100% not. And, I feel really privileged, actually, that I've been able to set up this programme or this service that we deliver to midwives and other healthcare professionals. And it's been really insightful as well, because, the midwives have sleepless nights. They also may have to go back to their own families, and they have living children, and will question themselves, why have I just delivered a dead baby and yet I'm walking back home to my living children? There's so many aspects to it. It's like a prism, really. There's so many twists and turns, and at the end of the day, I think we have to remember, actually, we're a human first, and then we might be a medic or a midwife or a counsellor or whatever.
And what does it mean to you to be an ambassador of Abigail's as well, Naomi? It's a charity that we both know very, very well, but you've worked with them for a very long time now. What does it mean to have that association with the charity?
Privileged, Nicola, so privileged. I feel really privileged that actually the service that I'm delivering is authentic, it's pure, it's really helping parents. Hopefully it's touching people's lives and allowing parents to parent, their rainbow babies and their future babies, as well as supporting our medics. So I feel really, really lucky that I was offered ambassadorship, but actually I have the opportunity to work and feel embedded into a charity that I feel passionate about. And I think that that's quite a privilege.
We've spoken to several mums and dads, some of them who have met you, Naomi, and they couldn't speak more highly about the work that you've done with them. And as you say, it can be life-changing. I mean, their lives have certainly been changed. And I know that some that we've spoken to still come along to see you. And I guess if it wasn't for the charity, we don't quite know what would happen with those mums and dads, do we? We don't quite know what support elsewhere they'd be able to get. So I think it's been fantastic from my point of view to hear their stories as well. And hopefully they let you know how much you've helped them in weeks and months since they lost their baby.
I think we do kind of know, or we have a good idea that if they weren't able to access this service, that actually a lot of them are just left and they just kind of fumble through trying to Dr. Google if there's any services around. And there are, there's some other charities that might provide like group support, or there's online groups that they can tap into, but that's completely different to accessing personalised counselling for you. That's something else that I'm quite passionate about, is that as counsellors, none of us follow a pro forma. We're all experienced enough and adaptable enough that actually we provide a service that is unique to every one of our parents, because what we do is we assess what their needs are. So every counselling session that they attend is completely bespoke to them.
Traditionally, Naomi, I suppose we think of this as it's an issue that affects mum more than dad, but I think we're all becoming very much more aware that this is certainly an issue that affects mums and dads and even the wider family. You obviously see whoever needs support from you, but has that changed in recent years as to who's coming to get some support and some counselling?
Yes, so I'm really pleased to say that in the last year, we have seen more dads accessing our services than ever before. And I can't tell you why. So if there's dads out there that have seen us and they know why, share it with us, please. I don't know if it's because before parents start their counselling with us, we give all parents the option of using their sessions, if you want, as like a mix and match. So if they don't want to attend all of the sessions, they don't have to attend all of the sessions. So mums and dads can take it in turns, or they can use the sessions to however they see fit. But I think it's great that dads are accessing the service, and I think it's great that we are now in the situation where dads feel able to come and see us maybe on their own without their partners. Because I think they are in this absolute unique position where they are an onlooker of everything that's going on in that room. And I'm not saying that what mum's going through shouldn't be recognised. It very much should be recognised. But also often, the medics are swimming around mum, and dads are just that onlooker. And it's not uncommon for dads to experience trauma just by being an onlooker. I often say to some of my dads, don't underestimate what you've gone through, because 99.9% of dads will focus on their partner and physically what that partner's gone through. But they then dismiss their own trauma or the potential trauma that you can get through watching and not being able to do anything. And, I say to them, you're doing this stone cold sober. Your partner might have a bit of morphine or gas and air, and she's not sharing. So, it's not to be underestimated. I'm really, really pleased that more dads are accessing this, and I hope it continues that way, because it's absolutely needed. And I think our feedback is that once dads have accessed our services, they then feel better equipped to support not only themselves, but their partners in future pregnancies.
Thank you to my guests, and in the final episode, we'll be hearing from some of the charity's incredible ambassadors and fundraisers. Thanks for listening to A Journey with Abigail's Footsteps. If you'd like more information about Abigail's Footsteps or how you can make a difference by supporting or donating, please click abigailsfootsteps.co.uk or follow us on social media.
This has been an I Am Listening original podcast. For more information, head over to our website, im-listening.co.uk.